Hello and good afternoon, CTS266 section 840 students for the spring 2016 semester at Anne Arundel Community College. This is the Cisco Networking Academy CCNP switch course, and this afternoon's video tutorial is going to be the solution set for challenge activity number 3, challenge activity number 3, where we're going to be looking to configure DHCPv6, or in other words, DHCP4 IPv6. As you can see, we've got the exact same topology as we did in challenge activity number 2, where we were talking about DHCPv4. So again, the scenario is not that much different. We've got the sales VLAN again here, but with an IPv6 prefix. We've got the IT VLAN, we've got server, and that's going to be in VLAN 33, and we're going to do a manual configuration of an IPv6 address. And we've got all clients and server should also acquire DNS information through DHCP, and here is the DNS server IP address. So nothing is pre-configured in this lab. Let's go ahead and jump in on the core switch here, and let's get our pool set up. Now remember, with IPv6 there is no IP DHCP excluded command. So in other words, there is no, if I go to global config and say IPv6 DHCP excluded address, there is no excluded address. As you can see, we've got database, ping, pool, and server. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to say IPv6 DHCP pool, and we'll go with the sales group first. Now, we are not doing stateless address autoconfig, and we are not doing stateless DHCPv6, or what you'll sometimes commonly hear referred to as DHCPv6 Lite. So we're doing full-blown stateful DHCP v6, and the reason that I know that is because it's asking us to do a manual configuration of an address, which means we're going to have to get the information just like we did with except it's not going to be the client identifier, but we are going to need to get additional information off of that server, the SRVR server. So let's go ahead and set the sales pool up. So the address prefix is going to be 2001:DB8:16:/64. Now remember that when you see the address prefix command under the DHCPv6 pool, this is a clear indicator that is going to be or that is stateful DHCPv6. So now we're going to say DB8:53::53, and that is the DNS server. Again, if you look at the options, there are some other options here. We could go ahead and put domain name in, ccmp.com, if that was the domain name. What other information do we have in here? Interestingly enough, there is no utilization, right? I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense. How would the router track 2 to the 64 possible interface IDs, right? Or global unicast addresses? I mean, it would be crazy to try to track that. So needless to say, what's going to happen is that the odds of duplicate addresses are, or I should say, the odds of exhausting the address pool are so minute that there's no need for us to track that. Okay, so let's go ahead and say do show IPv6 interface brief, and let's see what we've got configured. So Ethernet 02 is configured again, and then there's VLAN 22, but that's not configured, so we need to sort that out. Let me come over here. Yeah, we're going to need to sort that out. So we're going to go and say interface VLAN 22. And this is the switch virtual interface that we're configuring here. We're going to say IPv6 address 2001:DB8:16:1/64. Now, if I were to say do show IPv6 interface brief again, and we come down here, you can see that we did get a link local address, right? It's an EUI64 address because we've got that FFFE plopped right down in the middle of the MAC address. And so let's go ahead and say IPv6 address FE80::, and this is VLAN 22. So we'll say 22 link local, right? So basically all we're doing is assigning a link local address that's going to be a little easier for us to identify, and there it is, FE80::22. All right, so we've got that taken care of, but what we also need to do is we need to say IPv6 server, or sorry, IPv6 DHCP server, and then what was the name of the pool we created for sales? Well, the name was sales. Now, this is what's interesting, and I've noticed, I noticed it in the previous activity, the discovery activity, where we took a look at IPv6, or I should say DHCPv6. The other command that's needed here, or that should be on here, is the neighbor discovery for the managed config flag. Because again, we are doing stateful DHCPv6, so we have additional information we need to pass along. So that flag should be on, although in both this activity as well as the discovery activity, it doesn't appear that that command is required for this to function, but it is required outside of IOU in order to get things to function properly. So let's go ahead and drop down here to PC number 1. And we'll go from user exec to privilege exec, and it's going to be, let me double check, interface Ethernet 00. So we're going to go into global config and say interface Ethernet 00, do show run in Ethernet 00. So right now that's all we've got on there is IPv4 address, right? IP address DHCP, that's for IPv4. So we need to say IPv6 enable, and if I were to say do show IPv6 interface brief, you can see as soon as I said IPv6 enable, we immediately get a link local address. Now, in addition to that, I need to pick up the DHCP address, which should be coming from pool. And if I were to say do show run section DHCP, we should be getting this from, and it looks like this is actually the exact same activity we did earlier. I didn't even realize that. I thought it would have cleared the config at least, but it didn't. So the prefix we're going to be seeing as our global unicast is going to be that address right there, 2001:DB8:16, and then it's going to be a random string of characters after that, characters and numerals. So now we need to say IPv6 address DHCP. And we should see a message here. Let me go ahead and say end and write mem. So we should see some sort of a message here telling us that we've picked up the address. Let's say show IPv6 interface brief, and let's see what we see. And no message, but as you can see, we definitely picked up the address, and there is no question that the interface ID portion of the address is random, right? Okay. So there is our address, and we've picked it up with DHCPv6. Let's go to PC2, who is also in VLAN 22, and let's go from user exec to privilege exec into global config. And from global config, let's say do show run interface Ethernet 00. Again, we've got IPv4 DHCP set up, but now we need to set up IPv6. So let's go into interface Ethernet 00. So let's do this. What if I were to say IPv6 address DHCP without putting in the IPv6 enable command? Remember, the enable command gave us a link local, and that was it. It doesn't give us that global unicast address out of the address prefix pool. So if I say IPv6 address DHCP and then say do show IPv6 interface brief, what is going to happen here? Nothing, right? Because we have to have a link local address. We must have the link local address. So let's say IPv6 enable, then go back and run this command. So there's my link local address, and immediately after that we pick up out of the 2001:DB8:16 pool, we pick up the rest of the interface ID portion of the address. And so that's pretty much it. Very straightforward, right? The major difference is instead of saying network and listing a network statement, you say address prefix when we're talking about the pool here with IPv6. Let me get out the, where's my pen? There we go. So when we take a look at IPv6, really what we're looking at here is there's the sales pool, and we put the prefix in instead of a network statement. We still put a DNS server in. I can still get a domain name in there. And the major difference is it doesn't bind to an interface because, again, we're giving it an address prefix for which we do not have an interface in that range. And so we actually need to go under the VLAN, which is that switched virtual interface. If it was a routed port, we would go directly into the physical port, but this is being done under VLAN 22. So we go under the VLAN and say IPv6 DHCP server sales, and now this address prefix here is now bound to this pool, and we'll be able to serve addresses up. So if I was to clear this here and say do show IPv6 interface brief, you can see that that's Ethernet 02, and actually we're on the core here. Where are we at? Yeah, so there we go. So it actually is in that range, right? So there is the IP address, the 2001 DB816::1. So we are giving out addresses that are do show run section DHCP. So we are giving addresses out in that same range that we have configured on the VLAN. And again, it doesn't have to be from the same a prefix pool. It could be from a different prefix pool. But again, the key point being is that it's not going to automatically bind itself to the interface. And the reason for that is because, again, it doesn't have to be this 2001 DB8:16. We could make a 2001 DB8:35, right? And so if we did that, it would have no way of knowing, well, wait a minute, which interface are you expecting me to bind to? Whereas with IP or DHCPv4, it's going to be able to figure that out. It's going to know the answer to that question. All right, so now we've done the left-hand side, and this is going to be very similar to the last exercise. Let's jump back onto Core 1 here, and let's do the right-hand side, which is going to be the IT department. So IPv6 DHCP pool, we'll simply say IT. The address prefix is going to be out of the 2001 DB8:21:/64 range. And let's do that DNS server again, 2001 DB8:53::53. Excuse me. All right, so we've got the DNS server in there, and so now it's the exact same thing. So here's all we need to do. We'll come back to our diagram. We'll go to PC3, or actually, hold on one second. So we've got the pool configured, but before we do that, we actually need to bind the pool to the VLAN. And actually, this is not going to be to a VLAN again. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so they've done this point-to-point interface thing here again. And so this is, I actually like how they're doing this because then we get to see it both ways. Remember, the first way we did it with just assigning it to the VLAN. That IPv6 DHCP server statement went into the VLAN. And then I had commented that if it was a point-to-point interface, a physical interface, and not the SVI, that we would put it on the physical interface. And so that's exactly what we're going to do here. Do show IP interface brief for IPv6, actually. I believe it's still going to be the same. Ethernet 02. So yeah, so we're going to go into interface Ethernet 02, and because the physical interface is the interface that would be facing the LAN that's going to get the DHCP assignment, this is where we're going to say IPv6 DHCP server IT. So we say this is a IPv6 DHCP server, and it's using the pool IT. If we didn't have that, this would not function properly. In fact, it wouldn't function at all. All right, so now that we've taken care of that, we had to do the IP helper address prior to this, remember? And in fact, if I come to switch 2 here and we go from user exec to privilege exec into global config, if I say do show run include help, you can see, remember, we had to put this IP helper address on here because it's a point-to-point link that's in a different subnet than both the client and the DHCP v6 or v4 server in this case here. So when that broadcast shows up to the all 255s and it's doing a DHCP discover, trying to discover the DHCP servers, it's not going to make that discovery because remember, broadcasts don't by default span across routers, right? They don't span across broadcast domains. And so what we need to do with IPv4 is put in that IP helper address. However, with IPv6 and do show VLAN brief, this is probably going to be VLAN 33 over here. Yep. So if I said do show run interface VLAN 33, you can see that that's where we have our helper address. Well, it just so turns out that that is going to be the exact same location that we put in our DHCP relay destination for IPv6, right? So IPv6 DHCP relay destination, and that's going to be the address 2001 DB8 colon, and it should be 99 colon 2. 99 colon, or actually, let's double check this out here. So if I come to the core, 99 colon 1. All right, so 99 colon 1. And there's our relay destination. Let's also go ahead and make sure we have an IPv6 address on here. So we're going to say IPv6 address 2001 colon DB8 colon 21 colon 1 / 64. All right, so we'll do a write mem here and save our configuration. So show run interface VLAN 33. We've got both the helper address as well as the IPv6 DHCP relay destination statement that's going to facilitate us getting the DHCP address. In fact, let's go ahead, and that should be it for those two. All right, let's hit PC3 up here in the rotation. We'll go from user exec to privilege exec into global config, interface Ethernet 00, and do show run interface Ethernet 00. And there's our IPv4 settings that we had before. So we're going to say IPv6 enable, IPv6 address DHCP, and do show IPv6 interface brief. And there we go. So we've got our IPv6 information, and if I take off the v6, there is our IPv4 information. So we still have that DHCP address there. So everything is good here on PC3. So let's do a write mem. And then finally, and let's reread that really quickly. So all clients and servers should also acquire DNS server information. The IP address of the DHCP server. Okay, here it is. The server device in VLAN 33 must have a manually configured address. All right. So without there being a way to do a static binding in DHCPv6, what we're going to do is we're simply going to hard code the address. So that's a pretty straightforward task. So we'll go from user exec to privilege exec into global config, interface Ethernet 00, and just simply say IPv6 address 2001 colon DB8 colon 21 colon 11 / 64. And that is going to give us the DHCPv6 address. Let's do a write mem. Now, if I come back to core, let's look at this. So obviously, when we do the show run or section DHCP, you can see we created that pool right here, server. So if we were to say, go into global config, IP DHCPv6 or IPv6, sorry, IPv6 DHCP pool server. Is there a host statement here? There is not. And so this is interesting. So IPv6, you cannot do a static host assignment with that client identifier. And so that is interesting. I actually did not know that prior to this activity. So very interesting that you can't do that static assignment like we did. Where's it at up here? Right here, where we put that host command in there and locked it in. And what's interesting about that is you can do it with IPv4, but why would you not just manually configure the IPv4 address? Why would you try to lock it in with the client identifier to begin with? So I would probably have to do some more research even to see what the use case, what the difference in the use case would be. You know, I mean, if you're going to type all of this in or cut and paste all of that in, why would you not simply just assign a static IP address to that node instead of clogging up the router config with additional configuration information? So again, two different ways to do it. IPv6, it doesn't appear that there is a way. There's obviously no host command here, so there's no way to do that. I had anticipated that that was what we were going to do, but that is not what's going to happen here. So, all right, so fantastic activity. That pretty much takes care of everything. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys after spring break.